China is the most capitalist society on the planet. They have taken the message of capitalism to their souls. Transaction costs are very low and regulations are minimal for people. We have unnecessarily bureaucratized the Western world today, where everything takes time. That is not what I have experienced in China. Everything works smoothly and things happen very, very quickly.
Elon Musk is not here. He's in the US.
He's likely to go.
He can't be successful in this country.
I think it was really a disgraceful video with that moron thinking that making life difficult of entrepreneurs is something to be proud of. Elon Musk would fail in India is because it's an extraordinarily corrupt place.
The pace and scale of artificial intelligence deals lately has been staggering.
OpenAI and AMD announcing a 5-year AI data center deal.
OpenAI has signed a $300 billion deal with Oracle for cloud computing power.
I have no negative view of this kind of circular investment if it helps each other. If OpenAI needs chips and Nvidia wants to make sure that OpenAI has access to those chips because of the money they offer to them. In the last 10 years of Xi Jinping's rule, corruption has basically been removed from the life of the average Chinese.
Well, the reason that investors are interested in emerging markets is because they have a lot of people, better demographics, and faster growth. And India is number one in all of those categories.
Everything he said about India is wrong. There's no manufacturing moving from China to India.
Why is it taking more than a month for India to hold its general election? India is the world's biggest democracy.
Because of democracy in these third world countries, the bureaucracy and the rulers are brain dead and extraordinarily corrupt, and that is why good people have no way to get into positions of power. China is actually a very decentralized country. The reality is that China is the only country among the so-called emerging economies that has continued to improve.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. Today's guest is Jayant Bhandari. This is Jayant's second appearance on this channel. So welcome Jayant, how have you been?
Ali, thank you very much for having me. I'm very well, thank you.
No, thank you for accepting the invite. I know you're very busy and you always reply straight away. So that sort of gives me confidence, I guess. So what have you been up to lately?
As we were discussing offline, my work and my life, my work and my pleasure life and my vacations, they are all mixed together. I have never really understand the difference between a 9-to-5 job and then having a family time or personal time. For me, everything is mixed together. I want to live an organic, continuous life rather than split that into a work life or family life.
Okay, that's good. So you're still in Canada right now, or are you?
I'm based in San Francisco, Ali.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
That's where I spent. I spend increasingly more time between Washington State and San Francisco.
Okay. That's good to know. So you wrote an article on China recently, probably in September. If you don't mind, I want to share a couple of things from that article. I'll try to share screen, see if it works. Okay. Let me know when you see it.
I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, you can see the article. China is what I consider. So where is the article for me? So this passage, China has what I consider the most capitalist economy on the planet, despite the communist label. So I know people in Western media, especially America, Europe, and even in Australia, label China as a communist country. I mean, why do you think it's the most capitalist country in the world?
Because they have taken the message of capitalism to their souls. If you don't work in China, you go hungry. And it seems to me that everyone is encouraged to do his best, and they actually are culturally inclined to provide the very best possible services. regulatory control over lives of people is minimal. And I'm talking at least in the economic matters, there's virtually no control, which means that the transaction costs are very low and regulations are minimal for people. I also see that the guy on the street is not afraid of people in the government. He goes around with his life unmolested by bureaucrats or politicians, something that is very common in South Asia, actually in all third world countries. So, and in fact, even compared to the Western societies, I see the wheels and the cogs of the economy moving more efficiently in China, and that is why I think it's the most capitalist society on the planet.
So how easy it is to set up business in China? I mean,
I don't know how easy it is to set up businesses for an outsider, but for insiders, I don't really see restrictions in terms of starting businesses. Governments actually in China encourage you to do well, and the local bureaucrat is almost a part of it, in the sense that he wants to encourage you to make money. He wants to encourage your business to do well. Unlike in most third world countries, where bureaucrats loses nothing if the business fails, whereas in China the local bureaucracy is very encouraging. And this is there's another reason why I think China is a very capitalist country. When you go to a government office in China, and you can try applying for a visa for China, or you can go to a government office in China, they want you out of their offices as soon as possible. I mean, I have been for visas in Chinese embassies, and I'm out a couple of minutes after I enter their embassy. And similarly, I have been to government offices within China, and again, it's the same conduct. I'm out very quickly. They don't even spend time in saying in greetings. If you say hello to them, they might not, they'll probably not even respond to you. They just want to carry on their work, do it quickly, and get you out.
seems like they're saving on time, I guess. There are a lot of people in China anyway, 1.4 billion or something. So they have to do something to speed up the process, I guess. So I think that
I
might
don't
have,
think that is
yeah.
I don't think that is the reason. I think we have unnecessarily bureaucratized the Western world today, where everything takes time. And certainly the third world country people are after bribes. So they are and they are never encouraged to take decisions. So they are extremely slow. But that is not what I have experienced in China. Everything works smoothly and things happen very, very quickly. Also, because Ali, and this is the key about China, and most Western people fail to understand the importance of having an honest regime. Uh, what happens in the third world is that corruption is the motivator behind the psyche of every bureaucrat and politician. That is not the case in China anymore. In the last 10 years of Xi Jinping's rule, corruption has basically been removed from the life of the average Chinese. Most people will not recall a case in which they paid bribes to a bureaucrat in China. So, and really, if you have corruption, you really don't have the basic building blocks of institutions, because then nothing works.
I think I agree with you there. And that was going to be my second question. I'll share the screen again, your same article. I was going to talk to you about the corruption aspect. So let me know when you see the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. So here you've mentioned corruption makes development impossible. It keeps societies atomized. I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about. But we hear stories of corruption coming out of China. I know corruption still exists in China, but I also feel that government is trying really hard to clamp down on corruption. Because probably a month ago or so, I heard an agriculture minister or something like that got caught and was sent to prison for taking bribes. You hardly hear any such story in Australia or in America that a government official or a politician got caught and sent to prison. So that sort of tells me that maybe China, the corruption exists to some extent, but it's trying to clamp down on corruption. What's your take on that?
Um, well, certainly, China was quite a corrupt country a decade back. They have very significantly reduced corruption. Now, when I say that corruption has fallen drastically, it does not mean that that corruption has disappeared completely. Corruption exists everywhere on the planet. There are actually cases of corruption against senior politicians in the US as well. So it's not that corruption does not exist in the Western world. It is so minuscule that you usually don't think about it. When you go to a government office in the Western society, you don't think about in terms of how much you will have to pay in bribes. And I think that has what has happened in China as well. Uh, yes, I'm sure corruption still exists in China and it will continue to exist in China. Even in Singapore, which is supposed to be one of the most honest countries in the world, you still hear about politicians and bureaucrats getting caught because of corrupt practices or for taking bribes. So in real life, you can't really completely get rid of all the negativities to do with an institutional setup. But from my experience, corruption has fallen very, very drastically in China, particularly under the control of Xi Jinping.
I think that's. I again agree with that. I mean, you don't really see corruption in everyday life over here. I'm sure it's probably the same in America as well. When you go to government offices, the council offices, you don't have to, give bribe or do something illegal to get the work done. Just have to fill out the form. Most of the forms are digital now, so there's minimal interact with humans anyway, I guess. So um, again, it's a big country. How do you control corruption every day in every aspect of life? That's a big challenge for China, but I think they've done pretty well. I guess they don't really get credit for that. But when you talk to people just like yourself, or I talked to Jason Smith, he's a journalist based in China. He also talked about the same thing, and he also mentioned something very interesting, that China has many cultures and different ethnicities. Still, they get along really well with each other. Last time we were talking about probably a comparable sized country, India, which is also not monolithic, has many cultures, different languages. But India, I feel, has been disappointing. China has done really well in trying to foster harmony. Do you have any idea how China has done it? 'Cause it's really difficult to make people from different cultures follow you as a leader. Any insights?
So, I think Mao needs to be revisited. So Mao did horrible things. He probably killed more people than any other person in the last century. But at the same time, you have to still accept any good that a person might have done. I have traveled a lot in the southern part of China, which is bordering Nepal and Bhutan and India, and Myanmar. And what you see on the other side of the border is tribal warfare. There's a huge amount of tribal warfare going on in Myanmar. There is a lot of social problems on the Indian side. But China has been able to eradicate most of those tribal warfare. I have never experienced anything. I have never felt unsafe traveling in the southern part of China. Now, I have traveled on the other side of the border in Laos or Myanmar, and I tell you, you have to be very careful because you don't know who you might encounter next. I have traveled with insurgents in Laos. I have the situation in Myanmar is horrific. So China has done a few things very nicely, irrespective of the tools that they employed. The fact remains that they have largely got rid of the tribal warfare, the sectarianism within the country, which means that you can, as an individual, irrespective of your race or religion, travel around very safely. At least for my eyes, China today is almost as safe as Hong Kong or Singapore are. Those people who don't understand, Singapore and Hong Kong and Japan are uh, actually among the safest countries on the planet. These are safer places than any Western society I know of today. Sweden, Norway, Finland used to be extremely safe at one point of time, but those days are gone. Today, the safest places on the planet are in Far East Asia and some of the Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah, I haven't been to China. I might go there in February. I've got some business stuff that I need to probably explore, but I've been to Singapore. And yeah, Singapore I found really interesting and unique. No graffiti. People were always polite, respectful. Um, they wouldn't talk loudly. Just do what they are supposed to do, I guess. Even students there. Uh, I visited one of the universities there as well. And everybody seemed really friendly. Again, no graffiti stuck me because over here in Australia, we've got a lot of graffiti everywhere. So the moment council paints something, a bus stop or train station, someone comes along the next night and just puts their art over there. So, but that was really nice. And also the fare was very cheap from one end of Singapore to the other. And I think at that time, I paid 2 Singapore dollars both ways. That was nothing compared to what you would pay in Australia. So I was really, and that was mass rapid transportation, not just normal railways. I found it really strange. So Singapore has done really, really well in terms of benefiting
and
its
the
society.
Singaporean transportation is clean, air conditioned,
Yeah.
very safe.
Yeah.
And those companies, ironically, still make a profit. Those are publicly listed companies, and they book a profit year on year. So you can imagine how wasteful public transportation in the Western countries are. And the reason is, Ali, and this is again something that tells you about the capitalistic structure of Singapore, which is that they don't waste money. In the Western society, those people who have retired or the unions extract far too much money from the system than Singapore or China allows them to. Now, China, in many, many ways, looks and feels similar to Singapore. And I might even say that I find, and Singapore is great. I lived in Singapore for a couple of years last decade. I absolutely loved the country. And I completely agree with you. People are very polite. Everything works in that country. And from my experience, China has become very similar. It has become safe. It is clean. Public transportation is very clean, efficient, and very cheap. You still pay too kwai. I don't take too much public transportation in China because the Uber kind of system, the Didi, is so cheap. I pay about $1 or $2 to get from one place to another in China within a city. So I don't even bother going to using public transportation, which would actually charge me about 30 cents or 20 cents. So again, this happens because they keep the transaction costs, the frictional costs minimal in the system. And that is why, again, I would say China is an extremely capitalist society. So is Singapore. And in many ways, China feels better than Singapore from my experience, because there's more space in China. Things are cheaper. I pay something like 1/3 or 1/4 of what I would pay in Singapore for everything. So, and the quality is extremely good in China. So, yes, I agree with what you said on Singapore, and China might be even a better version of Singapore. People are look more happy and satisfied in China.
I think $2 on a taxi is unheard of. Yeah,
Usually it's a $1.50. Usually it is $1.50 from one part of the city to another part of the city, and these
that's
taxis are among the cleanest cars I have seen. They are all electric vehicles, and they are very well run, nice and clean cars.
yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone over here can imagine paying $2 for a taxi, right? For $2, no one even show up to your door over here. And also, then on top of that, you have to pay tip. Tipping culture is something that is exploding here, although people are still resisting. I think it came from America. Australia never used to had any tipping culture. I think minimum wage was high enough for people to afford things properly, I guess, or adequately. But when you see the influence of Uber Eats and Uber and all those American companies, you see that they don't really pay their contractors, employees well, but they ask you to tip them. So I'm seeing an explosion of tipping culture over here. But restaurants still don't take tips over here. Yeah,
So there is no tipping culture in Far East Asia. It is the tips are either by regulation included in the bill, the invoice, or there is no cash tip that you pay to anyone. In fact, very more likely than not, a Chinese would be offended if you gave him a tip, because he is supposed to do a good job without a tip. And I completely agree with that thinking. Uh, there's nothing like good wages. You get what you negotiate and what you deserve. In China, because government is not there to provide welfare to you, you have to accept making whatever you are skilled for, which also means that most of the society gets employed in the system. There are not many welfare recipients. There are no people who are avoiding working in the society. And it is not unlikely, Ali, that if you meet a bureaucrat in the morning, that in the afternoon he might do an Alibaba delivery for you, because his salary goes up and down depending on the economic situation, something that does not happen in the West, which again underpins the fact how fluid the economy is, how capitalistic the economy is, that the salaries actually go up and down in China, compared to, and something that you don't see elsewhere in the world. And he is then allowed to work outside the government positions to make up for the shortfall in his salary.
So is there any societal safety net for retired people? Or do people retire there? And what do they do after retirement?
Well, this is something that there should be a personal responsibility associated with your retirement, which means that you and I should be saving enough money for our own retirement. The society should not be responsible for uh, for our retirement. Now, I'm reasonably sure, Ali, that there is a retirement system. You don't die of starvation in China. But I can tell you the example of Singapore. In Singapore, if you don't have a job, if you are retired, you might get paid a couple of $100 from the government uh, for your basics, which means that you might be provided some very small accommodation and a couple of $100. And that is the way it should be, Ali. There is no reason why the government should be providing you money for a good lifestyle. Uh, the society, at most, should pay you for survival rather than for a luxurious life.
But the savings rates have been really low in China. I think they've just started to go up recently in the last 4 or 5 years, but historically they've been really low. So I always used to wonder, how do people save? I guess if they put their money in the bank, they would end up with the money that's below inflation value. I never understood that. Maybe they
Uh,
work more and save more, I guess.
I'm not sure if I completely agree with that, Ali, because Chinese, or at least the people I know, save a lot of their money. They keep investing in properties after properties because they want to save their money. Um, but I might agree with you to the extent that people in the lower strata of the society might not make enough money to be able to save. They might just make enough money. If you take a taxi for $1 or two, then this guy is not making a lot of money. He might work 12 hours a day. He might still make 20-30 dollars a day, and that is just the revenue. He still has to pay for the car and the fuel. So yes, some people might not have enough saving, but Ali, the best education I have ever had was when I was hungry. uh, when I lived in the United Kingdom for 1.5 years, I was mostly hungry. I was always close to becoming homeless because I did not have enough money. And that is usually the best education you can ever get, because you are forced to think about finding ways to make money, save money, be thrifty, not waste money, and think about the future. So that is the way I prefer it. I think the welfare system of the Western society has been disastrous. It carries a moral hazard which most Western people don't necessarily understand. Uh, it makes you intellectually lazy. It takes away the spark in you. You don't want to do too well because you know that government will provide for you if you fail. So I think letting people go hungry is sometimes a very good way to improve a society.
I think over here, what I've seen is obviously there's a safety net by the government, but I've seen uh, fat or obese people being homeless or probably going hungry. I never understood that. I mean, maybe something in the food. I know a lot of chemicals in the food, but yeah, where I come from, if you're homeless, you'll be really skinny. So over here, I think it's slightly different, I guess. But then the government over here is considerate enough to provide them uh, houses and try to work with you to get you a job. Some people accept the job, some people don't. But yeah, at the end of the day,
I
like you said, I mean, if people take responsibility and accountability for their own action, that's probably better for the society as a whole, I guess.
Well, I would object to your use of the word considerate. Governments are not considerate. They are only mediators who are taking money from wealth generators and passing it on to wealth consumers. And these are bureaucrats, usually who are themselves unproductive people. And that is true with bureaucrats around the world, including in Australia and the US. So, attributing values to bureaucrats is actually is not something I agree with. It's not the job of the government to pass on, to steal from Paul to give to Peter. And I think China does a very good job of that. Now, remember, if you look at the revenue and expense structure of Western countries, so often 50% or more of their monies go into welfare and warfare. China does not have to think much about it. They don't waste money on those things.
Sorry, I was just making a note of your point about the bureaucrats. That's a very interesting and illuminating point. I never really thought about that. I know bureaucracy exists and it hinders processes, but I never really thought about bureaucracy as extracting resources. I've just made a note. I'll
Well,
probably try to find some research articles on that as well. Yeah.
So Ali, bureaucrats in the Western world are very polite, very polite and very honest financially. I have, in my 30 years of living in the West, never paid a bribe to a government official. So, but at the same time, these are the people who are career bureaucrats. They are not entrepreneurial. They are not driven to learn and be better. They often want a lazy life, and that is why a lot of people go to work for the governments. And these bureaucrats become a frictional cost for the normal citizen. So if I go to a DMV office in San Francisco, which is the licensing office, it might consume half a day of mine, or maybe more than half a day of mine. Not that he's trying to extract a bribe from me, but there's a lot of people. The system is very inefficient. There are too many regulations, too many forms to fill. They still make mistakes, and I still have to waste my time to correct those mistakes. Whereas in China, if I go to a government office, and I have been to several government offices in China and in Singapore, they are completely empty, which means that I walk in and talk with the bureaucrat right away. There's no crowding in these countries. And he is responsible for getting my work done. So there is minimal frictional cost. Again, something that underpins the fact that China has managed to significantly reduce bureaucracy compared to the Western world. And that is why everything produced in China is so cheap. And that is why it is so difficult to compete with Chinese today, because they create good products. They don't waste time and money on unnecessary things. You don't waste time dealing with bureaucracy in China. And the end result is that the country has grown at a faster rate than any other country in human history.
That's true, and that's revealing. I'll tell you a short story. When I was setting up my startup a few years ago, so startup, very lean, you don't really have enough money. You're just on your own with your friends. The first notice I got was from a union representative. Do you have a union for your organization? I told them it's a startup. We haven't even registered anything. You're working out of our living rooms. What do you mean union? So you had to explain to them what a startup is, how it is different to a normal business, and we don't really employ anybody. We just employ ourselves, and we don't pay anything to ourselves. We're taking money from our own bank accounts to see if the idea works or not. But yeah, you don't really see anyone from the government saying, "Oh, do you need any help with your startup? Do you need us to open doors or give you, let's say, some facilities where you can try your ideas or technology, innovation, stuff like that?" No. Union reps. Do you have a union representative in your startup? We two people.
Well, again, Ali, it is not the job of the government to provide you incentives or provide you opportunities. And government officials are most incapable of providing you opportunities because they are not entrepreneurial themselves. So if they were entrepreneurial, they would be entrepreneurs themselves. So I think that's the right thing, that they don't offer you any help. But this comes as a surprise to me, that for your small startup, they asked you about your union status. You probably want to start your startup in North America. I have owned a couple of companies in North America, and I tell you, I have never faced a problem from the government. They never waste my time. At least as far as running and administering the company is concerned.
So it's not just that they wanted a union rep. If you set up your website with .com.au, government's gonna approve it, and they're gonna take money from you as well in Australia. So because then it's a registered business and you have to pay them quarterly, even if it's a startup. Wow. So unless you demonstrate that it's I mean, you have to go through different hoops to demonstrate that, okay, it's not making any money, but you still have to fill out forms and all that kind of stuff, which you don't want to do when you are in startup. In startup mode, you are just focused on revenue and growth. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's how the system is set up. Australia is not an innovative country anyway. So, I mean, that brings me to another point. I'll share another slide with you this time. Entire screen. Be better. Let me know when you see something. Do you see an Excel chart?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, so that's I'll talk about it for a few seconds, and I'll get your take on it. So that's the GDP of top 5 economies. Obviously, United States, China, Germany, India, Japan. But what's revealing is GDP per capita. So China is still very low. I think based on purchasing power parity, China is probably better than America. But when it comes to GDP per capita, China is not as well off as the United States. But the lowest of them all is India, 3,000. And then when you go to debt, none of the top 5 economies have any developmental loans or IMF loans except India. All of these economies are donors of loans, including China. I was surprised that China has never taken any developmental loan. But India has taken a lot of loan, and this 85% debt to GDP includes those kind of loans. But when you come to poverty, United States probably number 2, and then India is number 1 in terms of poverty. And then innovation, you can sort of correlate it with R&D as percentage of GDP. So again, United States and Japan are the biggest spenders, or when it comes to R&D. China, not so much. Germany, obviously, 3.1%, but India is very low. So I found this very revealing. I'll stop sharing it. That even in the top 5 economies, there's a lot of disparity when it comes to poverty, per capita, GDP, and innovation. There was a
Ali, I think this is a mistake that so many people make, which is that you compare GDP with GDP. It makes no sense to compare GDPs of countries. You have to compare GDP per capita of countries, because comparing GDPs absolute makes really no sense at all. All you have to do is to combine 5. You can combine Africa with India, and now that will be the biggest economy in the world. But that makes no difference. It's just it's that you should compare GDP per capita. In this chart, you are comparing a third world country with a second world and two first world countries, and that is completely makes no sense. Again, what you should compare is GDP per capita. A country that has GDP per capita of $3,000, India, does not really have enough money to pay for R&D or anything really, because he is living hand to mouth.
I think that's true. But I guess so. I'm not sure whether you know. I think you might know this. So this year's Nobel Prize for Economics went to 3 people who actually developed a framework of destructive value, or basically how innovation advances the economy of a country. I haven't read their research yet. I've browsed through it. So they were talking about sort of the same thing, that how innovation fuels growth after certain years of stagnation. So they've developed a framework. I still need to go through that research. But there were 2 other authors from America, Darren S. Merklow and Robinson, I guess, who wrote a book, Why Nations Fail, and they subsequently got the Nobel Prize for Economics as well, probably in 2017-18. But I read their work when it came out. I read their book in 2010 or 2011. It's sort of written in an academic way, so you have to really pay attention. And they were talking about they compared India with South Korea and all these other countries as well. I mean, obviously, their hypothesis and their conclusion was that once you have extractive political system, which is not inclusive, and you have corruption, no country will grow. So even though India was growing at that point, it's still growing. There are a lot of extractive institutions over there, and corruption is rampant. But they sort of were very hollow when it came to China. China you just discarded as an anomaly, saying that okay, it's an authoritarian regime. But they forgot to understand that China probably takes a top-down approach to innovation and research and development, whereas they were looking at it from a Western point of view, where you have to have a bottom-up approach to innovation, research, and capitalism. So I found that really interesting.
So I have read the book, Ali. I read it around the same time that you read it. It's a great book, but I think it consistently misses the point, the realities of why development happens and why it does not happen. I disagree that China has a top-down approach to innovation. China is actually a very decentralized country. The local governments are encouraged to encourage local businesses, and they are encouraged to compete with each other. And often local governments ignore the instructions coming from Beijing. So unlike what people in the Western world might think, China in many ways is a very decentralized country. Now, of course, it's not a democracy the way we think of it in the Western sense. The central government are not democratically elected, but that's the way it should be. They should be meritocratic. You don't want your doctor or engineer building the bridge in your city to be democratically elected. You want him to be selected based on his competencies in the field that he's working in. And that is what the institutional should be formed based on, which is meritocracy, and democracy is anti-meritocratic. So now let's get to the next stage. Why China is doing better and India is not. But the reality is that China is the only country among the so-called emerging economies that has continued to improve. I might add Vietnam and maybe Cambodia to that equation. But other third world countries are third world countries. They are not emerging markets. They will never be emerging markets. They are de-emerging markets. They are regressing to their pre-colonial way of lifestyle. And what most people miss out on, because it's politically incorrect, is the IQ of the people involved. Chinese IQ is 105. Singaporean and Hong Kong IQs are 106, 107. So is the case with Taiwan, whereas the IQ of the third world countries tend to be around 80 or less than 80. Without the right intelligence within the people, there's a limit to growth that they will face. And particularly when you set up institutions which are neither conducive to their local culture. The local culture would emerge from the local IQs, but the institutions that the third world today have are the first world institutions without the substance of the first world institutions, which means that they are run by tribal, low IQ people, and they will invariably be extractive institutions. They will be predatory institutions. But because of more enlightened, awakened people with higher IQ, Chinese, Taiwanese, Singaporeans were able to underpin their institutions with the kind of institutional culture that those institutions should have.
No, I think you're right, because at the point that you mentioned that China not being a China being a decentralized country is what Kei Eugene talks about in her book as well, the New China Playbook. And the first world institutions with corrupt mentality. So that's why I say it's disappointing to see these countries not doing well, except China. Because let's say comparing China with India, at the time of independence, India had industries. China had no industry at that point. India had Tata, Birla, Mahindra, all these industries. China had to start from scratch after a century of humiliation, and now China is way ahead of everybody, catching up to United States. Again, it's disappointing where these countries have ended up. But I want to share one thing with you. I think you talked about this last time, and I've found a clip. I mean, it's not directly relevant, not directly what you talked about. Can you see the video?
Yep.
Okay.
He's not here. He is in the US.
But he is likely to come.
Elon Musk is not here. He is in the US.
But he is likely to come.
He can't be successful in this country.
Why
I
not?
can tell you.
Why not? Why can't Elon Musk be successful in this country?
Because we Indians are here. We are here. He cannot produce what Mahindra can do, what Tata can do. Not possible. He can do under Trump's shadow. He can do in the US. He's super smart. There's no question about it. He's maverick. He's super smart. He's doing this spacecraft and stuff like that. He's done amazing. So I have nothing. I don't want to take anything from him in the sense that he's too smart. But to be successful in India is not an easy job. Elon Musk is not here. He's in the US.
So I don't know why there was music with the audio. I never understand clips that have music behind them. But yeah, so I mean, say whatever you want to say about Elon Musk. Maybe he copied ideas, but he's done a lot of stuff when it comes to developing technology or taking the technology forward. With that I see people clapping in that clip as well, when he was saying that Elon Musk couldn't have been successful in India. That sort of tells me that innovation is probably not given a proper consideration in these kind of societies, I guess. If Elon Musk can do it in America, coming as an immigrant from South Africa with nothing, surely he could do it in any other country as well, given the right opportunity, I guess.
Well, I think it was really a disgraceful video with that moron thinking that making life difficult of entrepreneurs is something to be proud of. Why would the only reason Elon Musk would fail in India, and he would fail in India, is because the transactional costs are extremely high. It's an extraordinarily corrupt place where people don't really have the work ethic. So of course he will fail, but there's nothing to be proud about there, because it actually tells you how lacking in factors of economic growth India is. So there's nothing to be proud about, and I'm just surprised that those people were applauding and being proud about it. And moreover, the kind of companies you look at Mahindra, and she mentioned Mahindra. You look at the Mahindra guy tweeting on X, and it's constantly groveling towards the Prime Minister of India. He has to constantly prostrate towards the Prime Minister to keep him happy. So no, and in case of the US, Elon Musk actually made so many statements against Trump after he was removed from the administration, and still he feels completely safe, which would not happen in India. So I think that feeling proud about your inadequacies is the most moronic thing possible.
Yeah, I also found it very strange. People were applauding the statement. Surely, I mean, any country would. I know in Australia, we would like to have people like Elon Musk, or have the government mindset to allow entrepreneurship or innovation to succeed, I guess. And I mean, there are a lot of good people come out of these countries as well, but then they go overseas and they start developing overseas economies and start running the overseas startups. I guess probably they get fed up with the system as well,
Well,
which is why they leave.
Because of democracy in these third world countries, the bureaucracy and the rulers are brain dead and extraordinarily corrupt and predatory. And that is why good people have no way to get into positions of power in India and other third world countries. So they have no other choice but to leave the country. I think democracy has done a lot of horrible things for the third world countries. They would have been far better off without democracies.
Have you read I mean, you would know of Raghuram Rajan. He was the governor of RBI, whatever, Reserve Bank of India, but he was also at Oxford. He wrote a book, Breaking the Mold. He also talks about the same thing you're talking about. Maybe India should not have been a democracy at that early in its independence. So I think he was also lamenting
no
the
country
fact,
should be a democracy. No country should be a democracy. You should not have democracy even in the Western world. The reason welfare state has become so powerful, welfare part of the governments in the Western countries have become more powerful, so powerful is because of democracy. Democracy basically hands over the governance of a country to the lowest 51% of the population. You really need the top 5% of the population to control the governance.
That's true. I mean, talking about India, you were talking about emerging markets last time. I found another clip. I mean, it's a 5-minute long clip, but I won't play all of it. I'll play it at a fast speed, and I'll probably talk to you about that. Let's play it here. So,
2024, a great year for U.S. stocks. The rest of the world generally up, but trailing the United States. Now, one sector that is still seeing strong inflows is India. The largest ETF is up 12% this year, the largest India ETF. Let's talk with Kevin Carter. He's the founder and chief investment officer of EMQQ Global, which focuses on India and emerging markets, and with Todd Zone, ETF and technical strategist at Strategic Securities. He joins me at the NYSE. Kevin, let's start with you. Your India Internet ETF, INQQ is the symbol, up 25% this year. That's essentially the S&P 500 return. So I know you just returned from a long trip to India. You've said to me many times India is the perfect emerging market. Explain to our viewers why that is.
Well, the reason that investors are interested in emerging markets is because they have a lot of people, better demographics, and faster growth. And India is number one in all of those categories, and it's number one by a wide margin. It's got the largest population the world ever had. Today it set a record. Tomorrow it'll set a record. If you leave out China, it's bigger than every other emerging market combined in terms of population. Its demographics are incredible. The dependency ratio, just the pure number of people under the age of 30, which is twice our population in the U.S. They've got the fastest growing GDP, and that's driving consumption. And so, it's the rise of the emerging market consumer that everybody should be focusing on. But in the case of India, it's a smartphone-enabled consumer.
Yeah, and our GDP at 3% this year has been, the envy of the world. But India at 7%, that's really something. That's probably got to be the highest in the world. So the key to a lot of this, I know you've been saying, is technology, particularly the digital identification system India rolled out in 2009. Tell us a little bit about why that's a key to understanding India.
Sure. Well, India has its own homemade digital public infrastructure. These are, government-initiated, nonprofit technology platforms. We use digital public infrastructure. The GPS is digital public infrastructure. The internet is digital public infrastructure. India built its own to go along with those two things, and it starts with what you've referenced, which is the national identity card program called Aadhaar, and that was meant to give everybody a physical ID from the government, because one of India's problems in developing was very few people had a physical identification form, and so. Not only did they roll out a program to give everyone a physical card, but they also scanned their fingers and their eyes. And now 95% of the population is in this. And with that biometric information, they're able to open bank accounts. 800 million people went into a bank and, with their finger and looking in a camera, opened a bank account in, 2 minutes. So they've used it to sign up mobile phone subscriptions. It used to take 3 hours to get a new mobile phone. Now you can walk into a store and be out in 10 minutes. So, and that's just one layer of this digital public infrastructure, this India stack that is really a game changer in a lot of ways. And nobody else on the planet has it even developed.
$95. What's it cost to get a cell phone in India?
three mega trends at the same time. The first is billions of new consumers, or 1.5 billion in the case of India. They're getting their first ever computer today, basically. You know, I got a computer in the late 1980s, right, when I went to college, but most of the world's getting their first computer today or tomorrow, and it's not a desktop, it's an Android-based smartphone. And when they get that device, they're also getting the internet for the very first time. So you're giving billions of people supercomputers in their pocket, internet access, and what makes it so powerful is because the emerging market consumer, they've never had a bank account or a credit card or a debit card. There's no Target stores to go to, so they're leapfrogging, and it's driving what, you know, I'm confident is the fastest growing part of emerging markets by a wide margin.
We just put up some of the large.
Thank you for being patient. So that was a clip probably 8 months ago on CNBC, I guess. So obviously, they are saying India is probably sort of a lion in the emerging market, which might be true, I guess. And the guy has invested a lot of money in India. His fund is based on emerging markets. And he's saying, in another clip, he was saying that India is sort of China +1, because a lot of manufacturing is being shifted to India from China, which I don't see happening based on my research. But obviously, there are people who still think Apple is going to manufacture in China, and semiconductors will be made Apple is going to manufacture in India, and semiconductor will be manufactured in India as well. What's your take on this? Not particularly on this clip, but this not mentality, how do I say it politely, on this phenomena of touting emerging markets. I know emerging markets, there are people there, they need money as well. But most of the money is going to emerging markets because there are funds dedicated to emerging markets. What's your take on that?
Well, the guy whose clip you played is as empty suit as anyone could be. He has no understanding of the realities of the countries he's talking about. He flies into New Delhi first class or business class, gets picked up from the airport by a chauffeur-driven limousine, goes to a five-star hotel, meets some of the top people in the country over the next 3 days, and then he flies back to the United States or wherever he lives in. He has no experience of life in India. He has never even walked a block away from where he stays in New Delhi. Because absolutely everything in that country is a shithole. If he walked a block away from his five-star hotel, you know, either he's an empty suit or he's trying to market his product, which is his ETF to raise money for investing in India. Everything he said about India is wrong. There's no manufacturing moving from China to India. It will never move to India. In fact, Indian companies continue to invest in China instead because it's easier and cheaper to make in China and then bring it back to India. There is no demographic dividend in India. The people are unskilled. They cannot do the job of even a maid properly. And that is why maids in Singapore and Hong Kong are not Indians. They are Malays and Filipinos or Indonesian or Burmese. So Indians are just incompetent. And so there's no manufacturing going to move to India. And in fact, why trust me? Look at the World Bank data on Indian manufacturing in comparison to its GDP. And you see that Indian manufacturing in comparison to its GDP is at its lowest in the last 60 or 70 years that the World Bank has data for. It is now less than 13%. So I don't buy a single thing he has said. And that is unfortunately the problem with today's Western world. It's too politically correct so that you can get away with the bullshit he's talking about, which is completely untrue. But people feel racist challenging him for what he said. And a lot of people fall for it because they have no real experience of working in India. and they never come across an honest writing or talk about India. All you have to do is to walk out of your hotel 2 blocks by yourself and experience the real life in that country.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you as well. I think he was trying to obviously market his own ETF and his fund, but it struck to me like he's a sort of a momentum investor. He had a lot of Zomato, a P of 380 or 400. I mean, obviously, I would never invest in that, but I can understand why he's going after Zomato. If you invested early, then it has done really well. So he's sort of momentum trader, I would say, trying to catch e-commerce businesses in India. But yeah, manufacturing, I don't see it happening anytime soon. India needs a lot of infrastructure. When you look at the infrastructure index, the global infrastructure index, India is really low. So yeah, manufacturing, I don't see that happening too much in India. But so this brings me to last time you talked about emerging markets. So this is the MSCI Emerging Market Index, the blue line over here. In 5 years, it's only done 7% annualized growth. That includes dividends. So it hasn't really moved at all. But if you look at the world index, it's 14.41%, which is still better. In 5 years, you sort of double your money with 14.4%. So yeah, I think you were right last time talking about emerging markets being a value trap, I guess. But they sort of need to do something to get out of poverty. I'm not sure what they can do if the systems are corrupt. And so even though there's democracy, you feel for the people, I guess, because people are really nice. Can't really do much about it, I guess.
Well, I don't feel for the people, Ali. The people, we get what we deserve in life. The third world people, and I never call them emerging markets because they are not emerging markets; they are regressing markets. My guess is, Ali, that about 90% of the populations of the third world will disappear in famine within my lifetime. So forget about getting these people out of poverty. They will continue to worsen with time. So unfortunately, you might want to have an optimistic view on these people, but things will continue to worsen in the third world.
The reason I feel for it, because we see a lot of refugees. So I work with as I mentioned in one of my earlier communications, I'm a STEM mentor, but I'm a STEM mentor for Melbourne University technology students. So I mentor PhD levels or master level students or people who have just started the job. But I also work with underdeveloped refugee communities over here. And when you see, so one of the communities that I really love is of Afghani community. They're refugees and they're so hardworking. They're so nice. If you go, so they've got a suburb where most of the Afghani refugees live. You go to the suburb, it's spotless, it's clean, it's cleaner than Melbourne CBD. People are so nice, polite. All of them are working. You wouldn't see any homeless or person or beggar asking for money. And then you feel that, okay, their country is going down and maybe keep going down in future years as well. They don't really have any hope. And these are the people that have managed to escape that trap. There may be more people like them. So when they come over here, they are absolute pillars of society. I mean, you can say, okay, they are probably true Australians, always work, pay taxes, help police with, whatever the police needs them to do, help other communities as well. That's why I feel for them, again, everybody's different, but there may be other communities that have come here illegally. I know a lot of illegal communities over here. They set up fake colleges, and no matter how many times you report that these colleges are fake, another fake college pops up on its place, and then people start getting degrees. But yeah, that's why I sort of feel for these people. But yeah, I can understand your point of view as well.
Ali, I think you have a very romantic view of these refugees. Once these people get power, they want to impose the same Taliban kind of system that they left behind. I'm not even sure which ghetto you are talking about. Where, and firstly, if it's a ghetto, they are not the people who have assimilated into the Australian culture. And I have been to many ghettos in my life, and I have never seen a nice, clean, polite, people populated ghetto in my life. So my guess is that you have probably a romantic view of the refugees, or maybe you have just encountered the very best of them. But the third world people are destroying the Western world. And that is why I'm extraordinarily pessimistic about the third world, about the Western world, because very soon Canada, US, and Australia will be third world majority people countries. And that will pretty much be the time to leave those countries, because they will start becoming more and more third world like as time passes, because uh, these third world cultures will start getting expressed in the political system. But moreover, they will fight with each other. In fact, recently, I can't remember which place it was. It was probably in the UK, where Afghanis and Pakistanis started fighting with each other uh, because of the war that is currently happening between Afghanistan and Pakistan recently, when just 2 weeks back they were participating in pro-Palestinian marches together. So these people have no sanity, and they bring in their third world cultures. So what you said about the high quality of refugees is not something I have experienced.
Yeah, that's true about people bringing their own problems to countries like these. So again, so these people are the ones that have escaped Taliban. So like you mentioned, infighting is still rampant in these communities.
No, I think that's a wrong way to put it. They have not escaped Taliban. They are the people who have lost out in the fight. Had they won the fight, they would be Taliban, and the Taliban people would be in Australia. So they are two sides of the same coin, and they bring their Taliban culture to Australia. Now, I have nothing against Taliban, actually. I think I have a positive view of Taliban within Afghanistan. They should have stayed back in Afghanistan. They should not have come to Australia, because they come to Australia not to escape the chaos, the culture of Afghanistan. They come to Australia for an easy life and for money. They still bring in their Sharia law. They still bring in their cultural pettiness into Australia, and they become worse with time, with every passing generation. So that's how I look at the third world immigrants.
Yeah. So again, different experiences. These people struck me really different, though. But yeah, that's a different discussion. But yeah, I mean, you're right. People bringing their own problems, and I've seen that. But you do hope and wish that the next generation would be better. You see a downfall in customer service when some of the people from other countries come here and start working in banks or retail. You see a downfall in customer service. The smile goes away. Everybody's really stiff, like they are in British Army. They don't smile. So yeah, you sort of feel that, and that's really obvious. But again, the problem is, at some point, it's not going to remain an internal problem of these countries. The problem is going to spill over to neighboring countries. That's the problem. So if these countries don't do well, they're going to impact on neighboring countries also. And Canada, you mentioned Canada, and I haven't been to Canada, but I have people, friends, cousins living in Canada. They say Canada is probably Toronto or a couple of other places. I don't know. They've completely changed the demographic over there. There was a statue of some Indian god somewhere. I found it really strange. Probably a really tall statue next to the airport. That's really weird. People still believe in statues, but yeah. But I found it really strange that they've got a statue right next to airport, probably a health or safety hazard anyway. So yeah, I mean, you might be right that those countries are changing and people may be moving away from those countries. But that sort of takes away the innovation and entrepreneurship that the culture already had, I guess. Then you might start to see decline in their economy also, which is not good. I heard a news that in America, a startup was bought by an Indian company, and then the Indian person fired all the Native Americans and hired Indian staff at a very low cost or low salary. So that's capitalism, I guess. If you want to increase your profits, you hire people with the low wages, I guess. So what do you do in that situation? There's no easy win, I guess. So there is one last thing about, so do you invest in gold also, or you just look for undervalued companies in China and
Well, I have for the last 2 decades been working in the junior mining sector. I advise institutional investors on investing in these companies. And they are so often gold projects, but I look at them as businesses. I have in the past suggested that because of the dysfunctionality that is emerging around the world, including in the Western world, it probably made sense for people to buy gold. Uh, Gold is a non-yielding asset, but our monetary system is truly screwed up. We have fiat currency everywhere on the planet, and this will disappear at one point of time. Even the United States dollar, which is supposed to be the best currency on the planet, the most liquid currency on the planet, has lost something like 97 or 99% of its value in the last 5 or 7 decades. So the fiat currency is not money. They are fiat currency bills. And for most people, gold becomes an extremely important way to protect their net worth, because these people are, because a lot of people don't really understand the property market, they don't really understand the stock market, and they are probably better off buying gold. The issue is that gold has gone up quite a bit over the last few months. I'm ambivalent about it right now, but it could continue to go up because the monetary situation is extremely bad.
yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I also find gold a non-productive asset. I've never owned gold. But yeah, it was interesting in the last year or so, gold has gone up. The price of gold has gone up so much, and China is buying gold, which I can understand. They've got a lot of money, so they have to put money to some use. India is buying gold. People are buying gold like crazy, and the price is just going to go up. But so there's another gold rush, AI gold rush. Um, uh, I'm sure you're familiar with it. Circular investment in AI. I will screen this here. I'll share something very interesting with you. Do you see this OpenAI symbol here? Okay.
Yeah.
So OpenAI, Microsoft lends it $58 billion or invest $58 billion in OpenAI. OpenAI buys Microsoft data centers with that money. So that's circular funding, example one. NVIDIA invests $100 billion in OpenAI. OpenAI buys $100 billion worth of graphic cards. Oracle comes along. OpenAI needs to use Oracle's data centers because Microsoft doesn't have enough data centers. OpenAI invests $300 billion in Oracle. Oracle takes that money and gives it to NVIDIA to buy their graphic card so they can use it in their data centers. AMD comes along. OpenAI needs to buy $100 billion of graphic cards from AMD. This is just right now, not in future. AMD offers OpenAI 10% of its stock. So OpenAI takes warranties against that stock to get $100 billion of funding. So this circular investment, circular funding, I find really, really amusing, I guess. It's money going from one point to another. So people are just inflating their revenue in the balance sheet. I guess at some point it might pop like the internet bubble. But in future, definitely there is a really high use of AI. What do you think of this circular investment? This is just now. There will be more circular investment coming up in future. Do you have any take on it, or do you just stay away from that?
Nothing. I have no negative view of this kind of circular investment if it helps each other. If OpenAI needs chips and NVIDIA wants to make sure that OpenAI has access to those chips because of the money they offer to them, I don't see necessarily a problem with that. It is when the transactions are opaque when in my view the problems emerge.
I agree. My concern was that it inflates the valuation of NVIDIA.
It could,
AMD,
and that's why I'm saying
Oracle.
if it's opaque or government instructed, then you have a problem, which has historically been a problem in let's say Korea and Japan. But I don't know any details of what you said. It looks very interesting. But it's not something I have looked at myself.
Yeah, and this is just a small part of the entire pizza, you can say pie, because there's Google in it, there's XAI, there are whole other companies that are investing in one another, So it's artificially inflating NVIDIA's valuation, AMD's valuation, Oracle's valuation, and the PE doesn't really make sense now. So I'm just thinking where it's gonna end up. Do you have any take on Nexperia Seizure by Netherlands? No.
Well, yeah, I read about it. I only read an article about it that Chinese workers refused to comply with the instructions of Dutch authorities, which as if that was something wrong to do. I think it was, if just based on what I read in that article, I thought Chinese workers did exactly the way they should have operated, which is that they have no duty to cooperate with Dutch government.
That's true. But surely Dutch people are not that dumb enough to do that, knowing fully well China can retaliate. China has always been the adult in the room, in my opinion. I'm not sure whether China will retaliate or not because there was another case, Huawei case a few years ago. China didn't do much about it. They just let it fizzle away, I guess.
Maybe China is not all that innocent either. Maybe they know that they were doing something wrong in these companies. And again, what I said was only based on an article I read. I don't know the details. And China is not necessarily all that innocent.
No, that's true. I mean, must be something that bothered the Dutch people or the United States, I guess. But what about the $20 billion bailout to Argentina? Any opinion on that?
From the US?
Yes.
Well, I don't know the details of this bailout that you're talking about, but I think Milei has clearly been very supportive of Trump. And I would not be surprised if Trump wants Milei to succeed. And Milei has, from what I have seen, done an extremely good job in the last couple of years. I thought he would fail, but he has done extremely good job. There still is a blue dollar rate, which is the unofficial exchange rate. But there has been a relative disappearance of a spread between the bank rate and the blue dollar rate in Argentina, which tells me that the monetary situation in Argentina has, at least from the point of view of unofficial transactions of US dollar has improved. From what I hear, Argentina is much better off under Milei than it used to be, and I'm not surprised if Trump wants to support Argentina. Hey,
Yeah,
Ali,
Trump
we should
mentioned that he
close
doesn't
in.
want.
Ali, we should close in 5 minutes. I have
Sure.
other
I mean, that was the
appointments.
last point. Yeah, that was the last point. Trump mentioned that he doesn't want Argentina to fail. He wants Argentina to come out of this successfully. So let's see what happens. But Argentinian economy has been in free fall for the last 20, 15 years, I guess. So let's see
Well, it
what
was
happens.
one of the richest countries on the planet
Yeah.
in the last century. It
Yeah.
became a lifestyle country eventually, and then it started to underperform. And that is unfortunately coming in the future of Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, because they have increasingly become lifestyle economies, and they are governed by people who do a lot of virtue signaling rather than protect their nations. So unfortunately, and then it's very hard to remove lifestyle orientation from the minds of people. I have for my mining work, I have traveled a lot in Australia, and a truck driver makes a six-figure salary. Then he wants to buy a big boat. Then he wants to buy multiple apartments, condos in Australia. And then he loses his job. Then he loses his boat. Then he loses his apartment, and he's back to square one because he had become a lifestyle person. So unfortunately, lifestyle thinking has taken over quite a bit of professional classes in Australia and Canada.
That's true, but that's how the society is brought up, I guess, over here. So, no, thank you very much, Mr. Jayant. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me again. I've taken more of your time than I intended to, more than last time. But yeah, discussion with you has been always very valuable. It's good to sort of talk through and bounce ideas, I guess, based on your experience as well. So thanks very much. Thank you for your time. I'll stop recording now.